So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Avatar Last Airbender. So let's start the series. The rain in the Land of Fire was not like the rain in Hai no Kuni. It fell with a solemn, rhythmic patience, a gray curtain that soaked the ash-strewn earth of a recently burned forest. It smelled of wet charcoal and something else, something deeply, spiritually wounded. Naruto Uzumaki stood motionless beneath the dripping canopy of a solitary, surviving pine, his orange jacket a muted smear of color in the monochrome landscape. He did not shiver. The chill was superficial, a physical discomfort leagues away from the cold that had settled in his bones years ago, in a different war, on a different world. His arrival had been neither gentle nor dramatic. One moment, he had been standing at the memorial stone in Konoha, his fingers tracing the grooves of names he carried every day, Niji, Jiraiya, the countless others whose faces flashed behind his eyelids in quiet moments. The next, a surge of disorienting, non-chakra energy, a twisting of space that felt like the world itself hiccuping, and he was here. Falling from a clear sky into the upper branches of this scorched forest, the echo of a distant explosion rolling over the hills. He knew immediately this was not home. The very air vibrated with a different frequency. Nature energy, the kind he sensed in sage mode, was present, but it was vocal. It had opinions. It was tangled with something else, elemental, restless, and deeply ingrained in the flow of the world. It was not the chakra network of a living planet, but something more ancient and contractual. 3 days. He had observed for 3 days. He'd seen the uniforms, red and black, efficient, ruthless. He'd seen their power, fire conjured from nothing but breath and motion. Bending. The word came to him from a snatched conversation between 2 soldiers resting by a stream, their faces young but eyes old. They spoke of an Earth Kingdom stronghold to the north, of the Avatar's return, of destiny and purification. Naruto's jaw tightened. The words were different, but the music was the same. The same tired, bloody song he'd spent his life trying to end. A soft rustle, not from the rain. Kurama's low growl resonated in the confines of his mind. They come. 5. Young. Afraid. Their fire stinks of desperation, not malice. Naruto didn't nod. He simply let his presence diminish, his chakra folding inwards until he was just another shadow in the rain-drenched ruin. From his vantage he saw them. 5 Earth Kingdom soldiers, their green armor mud-spattered and scarred. One was carried between 2 others, a leg twisted at a sickening angle, bone piercing the skin. They were children. The oldest might have been Shikamaru's age during the war, the youngest could have been in the academy. Their faces were pale with pain and terror, their eyes scanning the burnt trees for the pursuit they knew was coming. Keep moving, the oldest hissed, his voice cracking. The river gorge. We can lose them in the rocks. A whistle cut through the rain. A fireball, searing the gray, impacted a stump 10 feet to their left, exploding it into splinters. The group stumbled, the wounded boy crying out as his leg jostled. From the opposite ridge, 8 Fire Nation soldiers emerged. Their movements were disciplined, their expressions masked by fearsome helmets. An officer, his plume denoting rank, stepped forward. Lay down your arms. By decree of Fire Lord Ozai, you are prisoners of war. Your defiance ends here. The Earth Kingdom soldiers formed a ragged circle around their injured comrade. 2 raised their hands, and the earth at their feet rippled, forming a low, shaky wall. The effort was clearly draining the last of their strength. We will not be taken to your prisons! The leader shouted, defiance brittle as old glass. Then you will be eliminated, the officer stated, devoid of anger. It was a simple fact. He gestured. 4 firebenders took stance, the rain sizzling into steam around their clenched fists. Naruto watched. The calculus of war was clear. The Fire Nation unit was fresh, professional. The Earth soldiers were spent, wounded, and terrified. This was not a battle, it was an execution. He had seen this script before, on both sides of every conflict. The strong eliminate the weak. The cycle continues. Hatred is sown. More children take up arms. He remembered a promise. A promise to a broken friend in a crater that once was a village. I'm going to break this cycle. He moved. There was no burst of speed, no explosion of power. One moment he was a shadow under the pine, the next he was simply there, standing in the no man's land between the 2 groups, his back to the Earth Kingdom soldiers, facing the Fire Nation unit. The rain dripped from his blonde hair, plastering it to his forehead. His orange jacket was a shocking, impossible banner in the gloom. Both sides flinched, their elemental energies wavering in confusion. He was not of their world. His clothing, his bearing, the profound, unsettling stillness he projected, it was all wrong. Identify yourself, the Fire Nation officer barked, recovering first. In the name of the Fire Lord, state your allegiance. Naruto ignored him. He turned his head slightly, just enough to address the Earth Kingdom soldiers behind him, his voice low, calm, cutting through the patter of rain and the crackle of tense fire. The gorge is 200 yards north-northwest. The river is high. It will mask your scent and sound. Go. Now. The Earth soldiers stared, paralyzed by this impossible intervention. Who are you? Their leader breathed. Someone who's tired of watching kids die for old men's dreams, Naruto said, his gaze returning to the Fire Nation. Go. Something in his tone, the absolute, war-hardened certainty, spurred them into motion. They scrambled back, hauling their wounded, disappearing into the skeletal remains of the forest. Fire! The officer commanded and raged. A volley of fire, jagged and hot, shot towards Naruto. He didn't dodge. He raised a single hand. A swirl of blue chakra formed, not as an attack, but as a lens, a shield of pure, disciplined energy. The flames hit it and parted, streaming around him in harmless torrents, igniting the wet ground to either side. The heat washed over him, but his expression didn't change. He had stood in the heart of far worse. The firebenders stared, their discipline cracking into superstitious dread. He hadn't bent. He hadn't redirected. He had simply denied the fire. You are not a bender, the officer whispered, a new kind of fear in his eyes. What are you? A visitor, Naruto said, lowering his hand. The chakra shield dissipated. And I'm asking you to let them go. This fight is over. It gains you nothing but more graves to dig. It gains us honor. It gains the Fire Nation victory. The officer drew a pair of twin Dao swords from his back. You interfere with destiny. You are an imbalance. The word hit Naruto like a physical blow. Imbalance. It was said with such religious finality. He saw it then, in the man's eyes, not just militaristic fervor, but a genuine, bedrock belief. This violence wasn't just policy, it was cosmic necessity. Destiny, Naruto repeated, the word tasting of ash. Is that what you tell the mothers of the boys you burn? That it was destiny? With a roar, the officer charged, his swords gleaming dully in the gray light. His 4 remaining soldiers followed, launching coordinated jets of flame to pin Naruto down. Naruto exhaled. He didn't want to fight. But he would protect. His movements were a blur of efficient, devastating grace. He was not the boisterous, overwhelming force of his youth. He was the 7th Hokage, a master of the body flicker, of taijutsu refined through years of war and peace. He flowed between the jets of fire, his movements so minimal they were almost imperceptible. A pressure point struck to a firebender's shoulder, disabling the arm. A sweeping leg to take another off his feet. A disarming parry that sent an officer's sword spinning into the mud. He did not break bones. He did not draw blood. He ended the capacity for violence, nothing more. In 30 seconds, all 5 Fire Nation soldiers were on the ground, disarmed, gasping, their bending temporarily neutralized by precise chakra disruption. Naruto stood over the officer, who glared up with a mixture of fury and terrified awe. You monster! The officer spat. The spirits will punish you. You have broken the balance. Naruto knelt, bringing his face level with the officer's. His blue eyes, usually bright with unwavering conviction, were deep and somber, holding the weight of 2 lifetimes of conflict. Listen to me. I come from a world that believed in destiny. We had our chosen ones, our bloodline legacies, our cycles of hatred. We let children fight our wars because we called them saviors. We called it balance. He paused, the memory of a pale-eyed boy falling to save him, of a mentor dying alone, flashing behind his eyes. All it brought was rivers of blood and mountains of graves. Your balance is a lie told by the powerful to the desperate. It is a ghost that feeds on orphans. He stood up. Tell your Fire Lord. Tell your sages. Tell anyone who will listen. There is a man here now who does not believe in your destiny. Who will not let children be sacrificed to it. The cycle ends where I stand. He turned and walked north, following the path of the retreating Earth soldiers, not with haste, but with implacable purpose. The rain washed the mud from his jacket, but it could not wash away the new, unsettling truth he had just planted in the heart of this world. Behind him, the Fire Nation officer lay in the mud, the cold seeping through his armor, the words echoing in his skull more painfully than any blow. The report he would have to give would not speak of a powerful bender or a strange spirit. It would speak of a man who looked at the sacred engine of their world and called it a lie. And that, he knew with dawning horror, was far more dangerous than any army. High above, in the spirit realm, eyes that had watched the dance of elements for 10,000 years slowly opened. They saw not a new piece on the board, but a hand reaching down from outside, poised to sweep the board itself clean. The great, slumbering equilibrium of the world gave a single, disquieted tremor. Naruto felt it, a shift in the sigh of the wind, a new tension in the cry of a distant hawk. Kurama's voice rumbled, more serious than Naruto had heard in years. Naruto! This world, it's fragile. Its balance isn't built on stone. It's built on a story everyone agrees to believe. You just tore a page out of that story. I know, Naruto whispered to the rain, his breath a pale cloud. Good. He crested a ridge. Below, the Earth Kingdom soldiers were struggling to ford the raging river in the gorge. He would ensure they made it. He would not guide them. He would not lead them. He would simply be the wall between them and the death their world told them was their destiny. It was a start. Chapter 2: The Gorge of Unspoken Things. The river in the gorge was a snarling, gray-brown beast, swollen with 3 days of rain and the runoff from the scorched hills. Its roar filled the narrow canyon, a sound so pervasive it became a physical pressure against the eardrums. The Earth Kingdom soldiers had made it across, but just barely. Their makeshift raft of logs and torn cloaks had shattered against the far bank, dumping them into the icy shallows. Now they huddled under a jagged overhang of dark rock, shivering, their wounded comrade fading in and out of consciousness. Naruto stood on the near bank, watching. He could cross the torrent in a single leap, but he waited. He was not their leader. He was not their savior. He was an observer who had intervened. There was a difference, a critical line he had drawn in his mind years ago. To cross the river now would be to assume responsibility for their fate. He would ensure they were not killed, but their path was their own. They are waiting for you, Kurama noted, his voice a gravelly hum in Naruto's consciousness. They see a power they don't understand. In their world, power has a name, a nation, a destiny. You are in apostasy. I know, Naruto thought back. He could see it in the way the oldest soldier, the one who had spoken, kept glancing furtively at him from across the chasm. It wasn't just gratitude. It was a desperate, hungry hope, the kind that latched on to any anomaly in a hopeless situation and called it a miracle. Naruto had seen that look on the faces of villagers in the Land of Waves, in the ruins of Uzushio, in his own reflection as a boy staring at the Hokage monument. It was the look that created idols, and idols, he had learned, always shattered. After a long 10 minutes, the leader, his name was Jihai, Naruto had heard the other say it, cupped his hands around his mouth. His voice was a thin thread against the river's roar. You! Stranger! Please! Lao is dying! The bone, we need help! Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. The plea was a hook, baited with the most undeniable currency, a life in imminent peril. He could walk away. His intervention had given them a chance. Their survival was not his mandate. But that was the logic of generals and strategists. That was the calculus of the greater balance he despised. With a sigh that was lost to the river, he took 3 steps back and then launched himself. It wasn't a shinobi's graceful arc. It was a powerful, direct trajectory that cleaved through the mist rising from the water. He landed on the slick rock beside them, the impact firm but controlled, not a speck of mud kicking up onto the huddled forms. The soldiers flinched back, eyes wide. Up close, their youth was even more heartbreaking. Jihai had a sparse, pathetic attempt at a beard. The one holding Lao's head couldn't be older than 16. Their armor was too big for them. Naruto knelt by the wounded boy Lao. His face was the color of old parchment, his breathing shallow. The compound fracture was a mess of torn flesh, mud, and splintered bone. Infection would set in quickly. Water, Naruto said, his voice cutting through their fear. Clean water. And straight sticks. Now. His tone held no room for argument. It was the voice of a field medic, a commander in a triage tent. They scrambled. One found a dented canteen. Another used a small earth-bending shift to snap 2 straight, sturdy branches from the cliff face. Naruto's hands glowed with a soft, green chakra. It was a basic medical ninjutsu, one Sakura had drilled into him for field stabilization. He wasn't a healer of her caliber, but he could cleanse, set, and encourage cellular regeneration enough to stave off death. As his hands hovered over the wound, the soldiers gasped. This was not waterbending healing, which they might have heard legends of. This was something internal, something that radiated from within the man himself. What kind of bending is that? The youngest whispered, awestruck. It's not bending, Naruto said, his focus entirely on the intricate network of muscles and shattered capillaries. It's chakra. Life energy. Discipline. Anyone can learn it, if they're taught. The statement was deliberate, a tiny seed of a different philosophy. In a world where power was inherited by birthright, the idea that a profound ability could be learned was revolutionary. He cleaned the wound with water and chakra, carefully realigned the bone, and used the sticks and strips of torn cloak to fashion a solid splint. The green glow intensified as he knitted the worst of the tissue damage. Color began to seep back into Lao's cheeks. His breathing deepened. When he was done, he sat back on his heels. Lao was stable, asleep now, not dying. Jihai stared, then abruptly bowed low, his forehead almost touching the wet stone. Thank you, master. Thank you. You have saved our brother. We are in your debt. Don't, Naruto said, standing. The word was flat, final. I'm not a master. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I helped because I could. That's all. Your debt is to get him to a proper healer. Jinhai straightened, confused. Honor and debt were the gears that turned the machinery of their world. Naruto's refusal was a wrench in those gears. But you fought the Fire Nation. You possess great power. You must be a great spirit, or a sage sent to aid the Earth Kingdom in its hour of need. There it was. The narrative. The need to slot him into a pre-existing story. I'm not, Naruto said, meeting Jinhai's eyes. I'm a man who hates war. I come from a place that drowned in it. I saw your unit. You're not soldiers. Your children they handed picks and told to hold a mountain. The bluntness was like a slap. The other soldiers looked away, shame and anger warring on their faces. We fight for our homeland. The youngest, a boy named Kaido, said hotly. For our king. I believe you, Naruto said, his voice softening a fraction. I believed in my Hokage too. I still do. But believing in a symbol doesn't make the weight of a sword any lighter on your shoulder. It doesn't make the screams any quieter in your dreams. He looked at each of them, his gaze holding a century of sorrow. How old were you when they took you from your farms? Your workshops? Silence, broken only by the river and Lao's steady breathing. 15. Jinhai finally muttered. The conscription scroll came after Omasha fell. It was our duty. Duty, Naruto echoed. He walked to the edge of the overhang, looking out at the raging water. A powerful word. It can make heroes. It can also make corpses. The line between them is often just luck. He turned back. You have your chance. Take your friend and go. Head west, avoid the main roads. Find a village that isn't on any maps. And what will you do, Naruto Uzumaki? Jinhai asked, the hero worship in his eyes tempered now by a dawning, unsettling curiosity. I'm going to walk, Naruto said. I'm going to see this world you're all so willing to die for. I'm going to listen to its spirit. Before they could respond, a new sound cut through the canyon's roar. Not the rush of water or wind, but a deep, resonant boom that seemed to vibrate up from the very bedrock. It was followed by a tremor, slight but unmistakable. Above them, pebbles and dust trickled from the overhang. Kurama's presence surged in alarm. That is not natural. The earth here is grieving. It's been poisoned. Naruto frowned. Poisoned? Not with toxins. With blood. With hate. There was a great violence here, not long ago. A massacre. The earth remembers. The local spirit is wounded, festering. The Earth Kingdom soldiers had gone pale. Kaido made a sign against evil over his heart. The Gorge of Weeping Stone, he whispered. They say the Fire Nation trapped an entire Earthender battalion here last autumn. Crushed the walls in on them. No prisoners. No burial. The earth has been sick ever since. Sometimes it screams. Another boom, stronger this time. This one was accompanied by a low, subaudible moan that seemed to come from every direction at once. It was a sound of profound, existential pain. The spirits are angry, Jinhai said, his voice trembling. We have trespassed. We must leave. Leaving won't heal it, Naruto said quietly. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his senses, not as a shinobi, but as a sage. The natural energy here was thick, clouded. It wasn't the vibrant, wild chorus of Mount Maiboku. It was a dirge. Threaded through it were strands of agony, terror, and a crushing, final despair, the last emotions of hundreds of men buried alive. The local spirit, likely a guardian of this place, was not malicious. It was infected by this emotional plague, driven to madness by the spiritual poison left in the wake of the atrocity. What are you doing? Kaido asked, fear making his voice sharp. Listening, Naruto murmured. He saw it then, in his mind's eye. Not with the clarity of a Byakugan, but with the empathy of sage mode. A great, bear-like spirit of stone and moss, its form now cracked and oozing a dark, miasmatic energy. It was pounding its massive fists against the walls of its own canyon, not to destroy, but because the pain inside had to go somewhere. Its anguish was destabilizing the entire region, causing landslides, strange echoes, a pervasive sense of dread that would last for generations. This was the true cost of the war. Not just the broken bodies, but the broken places. The spiritual scars that would outlast kingdoms. The Fire Nation sought balance through conquest. The Earth Kingdom through stubborn defense. The Avatar, presumably, through some grand intervention. But who healed the wound in the world itself? Naruto knew he couldn't fight this. A spirit in pain was not an enemy. Sealing it would be an act of profound violence, like cutting out a sick organ instead of curing the disease. He had to speak to it. To acknowledge it. He sat down, cross-legged, right there on the damp rock at the canyon's edge. He placed his palms flat on the stone. Naruto Uzumaki! What madness is this? Jihai cried. Be silent, Naruto said, his voice taking on a layered, harmonic quality as he fully entered sage mode. Orange pigmentation spread around his eyes, his pupils becoming vertical slits. The soldiers gasped and stumbled back further. Naruto poured his consciousness into the earth. Not to command, but to connect. He sent out a pulse of pure, calm chakra, flavored with his own understanding of loss, of carrying the weight of the dead. He showed it, not in words, for spirits did not speak in words, in feelings. The memory of the blank faces on the memorial stone. The hollow victory after the Fourth War. The endless, quiet work of rebuilding that came after the fireworks faded. I hear you, he thought, projected into the stone, into the water, into the air thick with sorrow. Your pain is real. It is justified. They wronged you. They defiled your home. The pounding stopped. The oppressive moaning ceased. An immense, silent attention focused on him. It was wary, throbbing with hurt. I cannot bring back the dead buried in your heart, Naruto continued, his own heart aching. I cannot undo the act. But I can witness it. I can acknowledge the crime. And I can tell you that the ones who did this, they act from their own sickness. A sickness of the spirit that tells them this is balance. It is a lie. He projected the image of the young Fire Nation soldiers he had just subdued, their fear, their indoctrination, their own trapped humanity. He showed the Earth Kingdom boys behind him, just as scared, just as used. The cycle feeds on all of us. It even poisons you. Your rage is their crime continuing. Let me help you carry it. He offered no solution. No grand seal. He simply opened himself, a vessel for the spirit's grief. It was a technique of empathy, not exorcism. For a long, terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, the dark, miasmatic energy seeping from the canyon walls began to stir. It flowed towards Naruto, not as an attack, but as a river of sorrow finding a new channel. It seeped into the stone around him, into the air, and yes, a tendril of it touched his own chakra. The pain was instant and staggering, the final, suffocating moments of hundreds of men, the betrayal, the crushing darkness. Naruto gritted his teeth, tears streaming from his sage-marked eyes, mixing with the rain. He did not deflect it. He did not resist. He let it flow through him, acknowledging every awful second, and then let it pass into the vast, indifferent cycle of nature, diluted, witnessed, and finally, released. The bare spirit form, now visible as a faint, shimmering outline of moss and stone in the center of the river, looked at him. Its eyes, once pits of fury, now held a deep, exhausted sadness. It gave a final, shuddering sigh that rustled the trees on the canyon rim. Then it sank into the riverbed, not gone, but finally at rest. The oppressive dread lifted. The air, still rain-filled, felt clean. The river's roar seemed to soften from a scream to a mournful song. Naruto sagged, the sage mode fading. He was drenched in cold sweat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The spiritual hangover was a pounding headache and a hollow feeling in his chest, as if he'd donated a piece of his own soul. The Earth Kingdom soldiers stared, utterly silent. They had seen no grand bending. No epic battle. They had seen a man sit down, listen to a screaming ghost, and weep with it until it fell asleep. Jihai approached slowly, as one would approach a sleeping dragon. You calmed the gorge? He said, his voice full of a reverence far deeper than before. It was no longer the reverence for power, but for something incomprehensible. No, Naruto said hoarsely, pushing himself to his feet. He swayed slightly. I just stopped it from screaming alone. He looked at them, his face etched with a new kind of exhaustion. Remember this. Not all wounds are visible. Not all enemies are soldiers. Your war is killing this world, piece by piece. Not just the people. The world. He picked up a water skin and drank deeply. Now go. And when you tell this story, if you tell it, don't tell it as a tale of a mighty sage. Tell it as a tale of a place that hurt, and for a moment, someone stopped to listen. Without another word, he turned and began to climb the steep canyon wall, his movements slower now, weighted with the grief of a mountain. He left them there, by the quietly flowing river, under a sky that was beginning to clear, their understanding of their war, their world, and the nature of balance irrevocably cracked. Far to the north, in a dusty oasis, a young boy with arrows on his head and the weight of the world on his shoulders sat bolt upright from a meditative trance, his gray eyes wide with shock. Aang? What's wrong? Asked a water tribe girl, pausing in her sewing. I felt something, Aang whispered, his hand over his heart. Like a huge, sad sigh, from the earth itself. And then, a presence. Like a candle flame in a vast, dark room. It was sad, too. But strong. Really, really strong. He looked south, a strange, unnameable hope flickering in his eyes for the first time since he had learned the state of the world. Something had changed. Something fundamental. The first stone of destiny had been dislodged. Chapter 3: Embers in the Wind. The silence after the gorge was profound. Not the absence of sound. The wind still sighed through the skeletal pines, the river continued its subdued song, but a silence of pressure. The spiritual miasma had lifted, but in its place was a raw, exposed quiet, like nerve endings laid bare to the air. Naruto moved through it with the deliberate pace of a man carrying a fragile, invisible burden. The echoes of the Earthbender Battalion's final moments had seeped into his bones, a phantom chill no sun could warm. He traveled north and east, following no road, guided by a subtle pull in the natural energy. Kurama, uncharacteristically pensive, was his only company. That was a foolish risk, the fox grumbled, but the heat was absent from his tone. Letting a wounded spirit pour its rancor into you. You're not a priest. You're a vessel with a crack already in it. It wasn't rancor, Naruto thought back, his boots sinking into the soft, ashy loam. It was grief. And cracks are where the light gets in. Or so an old friend used to say. Humph, sentimental drivel. That light almost extinguished your chakra flame. This world's spiritual wounds are deep and septic. You cannot personally drain every swamp of sorrow. I know, Naruto conceded. He crested a low hill, and a new landscape opened before him. The scar of the burned forest gave way to rolling, grassy plains, tinged gold and green under a clearing sky. In the far distance, the jagged, purple teeth of mountains bit at the horizon. It was beautiful, but his sage-trained senses felt the underlying tension. The land here was a nervous system on high alert, every whisper of wind carrying the memory of marching boots, every hillock a potential gravesite. His goal was simple: understand. Understand the mechanics of this war, the architecture of its balance. He needed to see its heart, not just its bleeding edges. 2 days later, he found its circulatory system. A wide, packed earth road, scarred by wheel ruts and the prints of monstrous, mechanized treads. It was the main artery into the heart of the Earth Kingdom continent. And it was clogged with the detritus of a retreating empire and an advancing one. From a vantage point in a copse of twisted acacia trees, Naruto watched the flow. Disciplined columns of red and black marched west, their progress steady, inexorable. Supply wagons laden with looted grain and forged metal groaned along behind them. This was not a raiding party, this was occupation in motion, the systemic digestion of a nation. And fleeing before this slow, fiery tide was a river of human misery. Earth Kingdom civilians, hundreds of them, a ragged caravan of carts piled high with pathetic bundles, of gaunt oxen, of faces etched with a dust-covered despair. They were herded by a handful of harried Earth Kingdom soldiers, their green armor looking as frail as paper against the implied might at their backs. The two forces did not engage. The Fire Nation columns maintained a deliberate, half-mile buffer, a display of contemptuous certainty. They owned the road. The refugees were merely insects scurrying from the coming flame. It was a tactic Naruto recognized: psychological warfare. Let the enemy see your strength. Let them flee, spreading panic and draining resources from the territories they flooded into. A sharp crack echoed too close. A Fire Nation scout on a crude, treaded vehicle, a precursor to the tanks Naruto had glimpsed in the distance, had peeled off from the main column. He rode parallel to the refugee column, his helmeted gaze scanning the crowd. A child, a little girl with her hair in dusty braids, startled by the vehicle's noise, stumbled from the edge of the crowd into the road, directly in the scout's path. The scout didn't swerve. He smirked, a cruel flash of teeth beneath his helmet, and gunned the engine, aiming to miss her by inches, to terrorize. Naruto moved. He didn't appear in a puff of smoke. He simply was there, between the speeding metal and the child. He didn't knock her aside. He caught the front forks of the vehicle in his hands, his feet digging twin furrows in the hard-packed earth, as the machine's momentum was arrested with a shriek of tortured metal. The scout was thrown over the handles, landing in a heap several feet away. Silence fell over that stretch of road. The refugee column halted, a frozen tableau of fear. The nearest Fire Nation soldiers turned, their disciplined march faltering. The scout groaned, pushing himself up, his helmet askew, revealing a face young and furious. "You! Earth Kingdom scum!" he spat, climbing to his feet, fire already coiling around his fists. "Interfere with Fire Nation operations and die!" Naruto let the ruined vehicle drop with a thud. He looked past the scout to the ranking officer now striding forward from the column, a tall man with a severe face and lieutenant's insignia. "Your operation," Naruto said, his voice carrying without needing to shout, "seems to involve terrorizing children. Is that part of the Fire Lord's glorious destiny?" The lieutenant's eyes narrowed, assessing. This was not a panicked farmer or a defiant Earth soldier. This man's posture, his calm, the impossible strength he just displayed, it all screamed variable. The report of a strange, orange-clad man who could stop fire without bending had already trickled down the chain of command. This had to be him. The girl was in the road, the lieutenant stated coolly. Disorder is a byproduct of resistance. We are restoring order. Step aside. Your unusual talents may earn you a place in a Fire Nation prison, rather than a shallow grave. Naruto didn't move. He looked at the little girl, now clinging to her mother's legs, her eyes huge. He looked at the sea of exhausted, hopeless faces in the refugee column. He saw the same look he'd seen in the gorge, on Jinhai's face, the desperate hope for a miracle. He would not be that miracle. But he could be a barrier. This road is wide enough for all, Naruto said. Your column has its side. These people have theirs. You will maintain your buffer. You will not harass them. You will let them pass. A disbelieving laugh rippled through the Fire Nation soldiers. The lieutenant's mouth twitched. You issue commands to the Fire Nation? You are one man. I am, Naruto agreed. He took a single step forward, and the air around him seemed to thicken. It wasn't a killing intent. He had sworn off that 2 years ago. It was something heavier, an acknowledgement. The weight of his years, his losses, the countless souls whose memory he carried, settled into the space around him like a physical force. It was the gravity of a man who had stared into the abyss of total war and had, by some miracle, clawed his way back. And you are soldiers following orders. I understand. But today, your orders end at that line. He pointed to a seam in the road, a crack in the earth. The lieutenant felt it. A cold prickle on his neck. This was no blustering earthbender. This was something else entirely. His firebending training taught him to feel heat, energy, aggression. This man radiated a profound, chilling stillness. To attack felt like throwing a spark into a bottomless, dark well. But discipline and ideology were powerful drugs. Take him, the lieutenant ordered, his voice tight. 6 firebenders stepped forward, forming a semicircle. They unleashed a coordinated volley, not wild blasts, but focused jets of intense blue-white flame, designed to cut off escape and incinerate. Naruto didn't retreat. He raised a hand, fingers splayed. A wall of translucent chakra, hexagonal and shimmering like heat haze, materialized before him. The flame struck it and splashed outward, flowing over its surface like water over glass, dissipating harmlessly into the air. The ground at his feet didn't even blacken. The firebenders stared, their confidence shattering. He hadn't moved. He hadn't bent a single element. He had just denied reality as they knew it. Again! Maximum power! The lieutenant roared, a note of panic entering his voice. Naruto sighed, a sound of deep weariness. He couldn't stand here and deflect fire all day. He had to make a statement that would linger, that would buy these refugees more than just this moment. As the next, more powerful barrage gathered, he crouched slightly and slammed his palm flat onto the road. Doton, Yomi no Nawa, Earth Release, rope from the underworld. It was a mid-level ninjutsu, one of many he mastered. But here, in this elementally charged world, its effect was different. He wasn't just manipulating pre-existing earth with chakra. He was introducing a foreign energy into the very matrix of the ground. The earth in front of the firebenders didn't just rise up. It erupted in thick, snaking tendrils of compacted soil and stone, moving with ascension, grasping speed. They wrapped around the firebenders' legs, torsos, and arms, not to crush, but to immobilize, pinning them in place up to their necks in their own earthen cocoons. They struggled, but the bonds were seamless, hardened by chakra. The lieutenant, standing further back, was left untouched, staring at his encased men. Earthbending, but no movement. You didn't move. I don't need to, Naruto said, straightening. He walked towards the lieutenant, his steps measured. The remaining soldiers raised their spears, hands trembling. Your bending is a gift from the world. You borrow its power. What I do comes from within. It is self-mastery. You were born with a key to a door. I built the house around me. He stopped a few feet from the pale lieutenant. Tell your commander. Tell your fire lord. There is a man walking this road who does not play by the rules of your elemental game. My only rule is this: harm the helpless, and I will be there. Not to conquer you. To stop you. Every time. He turned his back on the lieutenant, an act of breathtaking disregard for military threat. He walked towards the refugee column. The people shrank back, fear of the new replacing fear of the old. He addressed them, his voice gentler but no less firm. This road is yours as much as it is theirs. Walk it. Do not cower. Do not give them the satisfaction of your terror. Your fear is the fuel for their fire. An elderly man with a face like cracked leather stepped forward, leaning on a staff. Who are you, stranger? A spirit? An avatar of the earth? I am Naruto Uzumaki, he said. Just a man. A tired man who has seen enough of this. He looked at the distant mountains. Head for those high passes. The terrain will slow their machines. Find streams off the main path. You know this land better than they do. Use that knowledge. It wasn't a grand strategy. It was basic guerrilla survival. But it was more than anyone had offered them in weeks. He then did something that baffled both refugees and soldiers alike. He walked to the wrecked scout vehicle, lifted it with ease, and placed it sideways across the road, not as a barricade, but as a marker. Then, with a series of swift hand signs, a strange, silent dance to onlookers, he placed a subtle genjutsu over the area. Not a powerful one. Just a mild, pervasive suggestion of unease, a feeling that this particular stretch of road was watched. It would make the Fire Nation think twice before lingering or harassing here. As he finished, a familiar, unwanted sensation prickled at the edge of his sage perception. Not a spirit. A human consciousness, but one blazing with a cold, focused intensity, observing from a far ridge. It felt like a polished blade resting against a whetstone. Naruto didn't turn to look. He knew he'd been noted by a higher pay grade. He gave the refugees one last nod, then stepped off the road and melted into the tall grasses of the plain, heading not towards the mountains, but on a diagonal intercept course with the observer on the ridge. He wouldn't be tracked. He would do the tracking. Behind him, the refugees, emboldened by the tangible shift in power, began to move forward with a straighter spine. The Fire Nation lieutenant barked orders to dig out his men, his face a mask of humiliated fury. The report he would send would be frantic, escalating. Not a bender. Not a spirit. A tactical and philosophical anomaly. He renders our elemental superiority irrelevant. He undermines morale by protecting the worthless. He must be analyzed. And then, he must be extinguished. On the ridge, a figure clad in blue steel armor, with a face of sharp angles and eyes like smoldering coals, lowered a far-seeing glass. Prince Zuko's scar itched, a phantom pain. He had seen the entire incident. The impossible strength. The disdain for fire. The calm, devastating efficiency. This was no Earth Kingdom hero. This was something else. A piece on the board that didn't belong, threatening to tip it over entirely. And if there was one thing Fire Lord Ozai's exiled son understood, it was the desperate, clawing need to capture something that could change the game. The chase, Naruto realized as he felt the distant, fiery gaze lock onto his general direction, had begun. But he was no longer a boy running to be acknowledged. He was a force, walking deliberately into the storm, ready to teach a world obsessed with burning destinies the value of a steady, unbending wall. Chapter 4: The Chase That Walks. The plains gave way to a landscape of fractured foothills and deep, shadowed gullies. The air grew cooler, carrying the mineral scent of wet stone and the distant, ozone tang of a coming storm. Naruto moved through this broken terrain with a predator's patience and a ghost's silence. He was not fleeing. He was allowing the pursuit, controlling its pace, its direction. The presence on the ridge was a persistent spark in his sage sense, a concentrated knot of fiery ambition, frustration, and a pain so deep it had calcified into purpose. Prince Zuko, Kurama supplied, the name surfacing from a snatched memory of refugee whispers. The banished. The scarred one. He hunts the Avatar with a desperation that borders on madness. Now it seems he hunts you. He's welcome to try, Naruto thought, leaping a 20-foot chasm without breaking stride. But he hunts a ghost of a different war. He'd analyzed the prince's energy from a distance. It was a turbulent inferno, but unlike the cold, ideological burn of the Fire Nation columns, Zuko's fire was personal. It was a scream given flame. Naruto understood screams. He'd housed one for most of his life. He also understood the tyranny of a single, all-consuming goal, to be acknowledged, to go home. It was a mirror, warped and darkened, but a mirror nonetheless. His plan was not to fight the prince. It was to talk to him. To force a confrontation outside the context of armies and nations. But to do that, he needed the right stage. He found it as the sun bled out behind the western mountains, a natural amphitheater of black basalt, carved by ancient water into a bowl half a mile across. At its center lay a still, dark pool, fed by a trickling waterfall that gleamed silver in the twilight. The energy here was clean, neutral, a blank slate. It was a place for truths, not propaganda. Naruto stopped at the pool's edge, sitting on a flat rock. He took out a ration bar from his seal storage, a taste of a world away, and ate slowly, waiting. He didn't hide his chakra. He let it pulse softly, a lighthouse in the gathering dusk. It took less than an hour. The first sign was the soft crunch of gravel on the high rim. Then, a figure descended into the bowl, not with stealth, but with a deliberate, confrontational clatter of armor. Prince Zuko landed in a crouch 20 yards away, his dual Dao swords already drawn, his good eye narrowed, the scarred side of his face a stark mask in the fading light. He was younger than Naruto expected, barely more than a boy, but his stance spoke of harsh training and harder experience. "You," Zuko said, his voice a low rasp. The one who stops fire. Naruto finished his bar, carefully stowed the wrapper, and looked up. Prince Zuko. A flicker of surprise, quickly smothered by suspicion. You know of me. I know a hunter when I see one. The question is, what are you hunting for? My honor, Zuko snapped, as if the words were a reflex. And you are in my way. You disrupted a Fire Nation operation. You humiliated our soldiers. You do things that are impossible. The last part was said with a scientist's frustration. This world had rules. Naruto broke them. Saving a child from being run down is impossible in your world? Naruto asked, his tone devoid of mockery. It was a genuine question. It's not about the child. Zuko's voice rose, echoing slightly in the stone bowl. It's about order. Destiny. The Fire Nation is bringing a new order to the world. Resistance is a crime against destiny. I've heard the speech. Naruto interrupted, his calm a stark contrast to Zuko's heat. He stood up, dusting his hands. From men with cleaner faces and colder hearts. But you, Prince, you don't say it like you believe it. You say it like a prayer you're afraid has stopped being heard. Zuko flinched as if struck. You know nothing. I know the look of a man chasing something he thinks will fix him, Naruto said, taking a step forward. Zuko's swords came up, but Naruto didn't stop. He walked slowly around the edge of the pool, keeping the water between them. I wore that look for years. If I just become Hokage, if I just bring Sasuke back, if I just win the war, then you get the thing, and you find the hole inside you is still there, just a different shape. I am not here for your peasant philosophy. Zuko snarled, but he didn't attack. The words were getting in, under the armor, finding the cracks. You will come with me. Your abilities will be studied by Fire Nation sages. Your defiance will be punished. That is your destiny. Destiny, Naruto repeated, the word a stone dropped into the still pool of his voice. A chain they make you think is a crown. He stopped moving, directly across from Zuko. I'll make you a deal, Prince. A test. You want to capture me? Try. Right here, right now. No armies. No titles. Just you and your fire, and me and my will. If you can lay a hand on me, I'll come quietly to your Fire Lord. I'll even be polite. The offer hung in the cool air, ludicrous, insulting, irresistible. It cut through the grand narrative of nations and honor and spoke directly to the wounded boy inside the prince who just wanted to prove he was strong enough. You're mocking me, Zuko whispered, the fire around his fists winking out for a second, replaced by a tremor of raw vulnerability. No, Naruto said, and for the first time, he let a fraction of his own weight show in his eyes. The sorrow of the gorge, the fatigue of 100 battles, the resolve of a man holding up the sky. I am offering you a clean fight. Something your war, with its burning villages and crushed battalions, never gives you. With a guttural yell that was equal parts fury and anguish, Zuko attacked. He was fast, a whirlwind of precise, acrobatic strikes. Fire erupted from his feet and fists, not as wild blasts, but as extensions of his swordsmanship, sweeping arcs of flame, pinpoint jabs of superheated air. It was a beautiful, lethal dance, the pinnacle of a nation's martial art. Naruto didn't bend. He didn't summon clones. He simply moved. He flowed around the fire like water around a hot stone, his movements so minimal they were whispers. A tilt of the head avoided a searing whip of flame. A shift of his hips let a fireball pass by, close enough to feel its heat on his jacket. He weaved through the onslaught, his feet silent on the basalt, his eyes never leaving Zuko's. He was teaching, not fighting. Showing Zuko the space between intention and action, the gap a truly disciplined warrior could inhabit. Fight back! Zuko screamed, his frustration mounting. He launched a combination, a low sweep of fire to trip, followed by a dual sword lunge at Naruto's chest, wreathed in flame. Naruto didn't block the swords. He stepped into the lunge, inside Zuko's guard. His left hand came up, 2 fingers extended, and tapped Zuko's right wrist with precise chakra control. A nerve cluster fired. Zuko's hand spasmed, and his sword clattered to the stone. Before the prince could react, Naruto's other hand was a blur, a gentle but immovable pressure against Zuko's chest. It wasn't a push. It was an anchor. Zuko froze, off balance, one sword gone, the other held uselessly away from his body. He was pinned not by strength, but by perfect tactical positioning. He stared into Naruto's calm, blue eyes from inches away. He could feel the steady, powerful thrum of life energy within this strange man, a heartbeat as deep and constant as a drum from the world's core. You rely on your fire, Naruto said quietly, his breath fogging in the cool air between them. It is a magnificent gift. But it is outside of you. You command it, but you are not one with it. When it fails, you feel empty. He released the pressure and stepped back, giving Zuko space. My power, it comes from my connection to myself. To my friends living and dead. To the very energy of life. It cannot be taken from me, because it is me. Your honor, Prince Zuko, cannot be given to you by your father any more than my strength could be given to me by a Hokage. It must be built, brick by painful brick, from the inside out. Zuko stumbled back, breathing heavily, his face a storm of emotions, humiliation, confusion, a dawning, terrifying hope. What are you? The question was no longer an accusation, but a plea. I told you. Naruto Uzumaki. He bent and picked up Zuko's fallen sword. He offered it back, hilt first. A man who believes our greatest battles aren't fought against enemies, but against the stories we're told about ourselves. Zuko took the sword, his hand trembling. The fight was gone from him, drained away by the sheer, disorienting force of Naruto's empathy. My father, he said my honor was at the end of a quest. That I had to capture the Avatar. And if you did? Naruto asked, turning to look at the stardusted sky now emerging overhead. Would the boy who gave you that scar look at you with anything other than the same contempt? It was the first direct reference to the scar. Zuko's hand flew to his face, a reflex of shame. You don't understand. It was a lesson. Disrespect must be punished. I've had lessons like that, Naruto said, his voice distant, seeing a classroom of children throwing erasers, a mob with pitchforks. They don't teach respect. They teach fear. And fear is a brittle foundation for a life. Or a nation. The truth of it, spoken so simply, was a crack in the dam of Zuko's indoctrination. He sank to his knees, not in surrender, but in exhaustion. The chase, the rage, the desperate hope, it had led him here, to a dark pool in the wilderness, being dissected by a stranger who saw him with terrifying clarity. What do I do? The whisper was torn from him, barely audible. Naruto didn't turn. I can't tell you that. No one can. But I can ask you a question. When you imagine your honor restored, your home waiting, what do you see yourself doing there? Sitting on a throne? Or healing something? Zuko had no answer. The vision had always been a blurry tableau of acceptance, of his father's approving nod. The after had never been considered. A sudden, different disturbance rippled through the natural energy of the amphitheater. It was playful, curious, vast, and profoundly ancient. The surface of the dark pool shimmered, not with moonlight, but with an internal, silvery luminescence. Kurama stirred. We have a guest. A big one. From the center of the pool, a shape coalesced. It was serpentine, colossal, its scales reflecting the moon and stars that weren't yet fully visible. Its body seemed both solid and made of liquid starlight. Two intelligent, whiskered faces emerged from the water, one light, one dark, both regarding the two humans on the shore. Interesting. The two voices spoke in unison, a harmony that vibrated in the bones. A fire that burns with two fuels, rage and shame. And a candle that is not a candle, but a sun folded into a man. You have disturbed the deep streams, little sun. The world's spirit twitches in its sleep. Naruto bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he'd learned from the toads. Great spirit. I am Naruto Uzumaki. I mean no disturbance. Only to understand. Understanding is a disturbance. The spirit, the ocean and moon, Kurama identified, said, its twin heads weaving. You carry a weight not of this world. You grieve for wounds you did not make. You question balances you did not design. Why? Because I've seen what happens when balance is a cage, Naruto said, meeting the spirit's fathomless gaze. When it's used to justify suffering. Is the balance of this world a living, growing thing? Or is it a statue everyone is too afraid to touch? The spirit was silent for a long moment. The very air seemed to hold its breath. Zuko stared, petrified, at the manifestation of cosmic power. He had seen spirits, but never one so conversational. The Avatar is the touchstone. The spirit finally intoned. The great adjuster. The will of the world in mortal form. And if the mortal is a child? Naruto pressed, his voice gentle but unwavering. Burdened with fixing the mistakes of generations? Is that balance? Or is it the passing of a curse? The twin heads recoiled slightly, as if the concept was a novel toxin. You speak of the Avatar cycle as a curse. This is a new thought. A dangerous thought. Truth often is, Naruto said. I don't seek to destroy your balance, great spirit. I seek to ask if it can be kinder. The ocean and moon spirit considered him, its luminescence pulsing. Kindness is not a cosmic principle, little son. It is a mortal invention. But it is not without its charm. Your presence is a question mark in the great text. We will watch. The world will answer in its own way. Its gaze shifted to Zuko, who shuddered. And you, too, fueled fire. Your destiny is a knot of your own making and your father's pulling. To cut it requires a blade you have not yet forged. Look to the candle sun. He knows the color of that metal. With a final, shimmering ripple, the colossal spirit sank back into the pool, which returned to ordinary black water. The amphitheater was silent once more, but the silence was now charged with cosmic implication. Zuko slowly got to his feet. The encounter had stripped him raw. The ideological certitudes of the Fire Nation, the singular goal of capturing the Avatar, felt small and grubby under the gaze of the universe. They listen to you," he mumbled. "A spirit, listen to you argue." "They're not gods," Naruto said, walking back around the pool to stand before Zuko. "They're forces. With personalities. And even forces can get stuck in old patterns." He placed a hand on Zuko's armored shoulder. The touch was firm, brotherly. "The blade you need to forge, Prince, it's not one of fire. It's one of choice. And you don't have to forge it alone." For the first time, Zuko didn't shrug off the contact. He looked lost, a ship without a port in a suddenly vast and confusing ocean. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Where I'm needed," Naruto said. "Not where I'm destined." He gave Zuko's shoulder a final squeeze and turned, walking towards the eastern rim of the amphitheater. "Remember this night, Zuko. Not as a defeat. As a beginning. The first time you questioned the story they wrote for you." He vanished over the edge, leaving the Crown Prince of the Fire Nation alone in the dark with the echo of spirits and the terrifying, exhilarating burden of a question he could never unask. Far to the north, in a makeshift camp, a young air nomad felt the distant, benevolent presence of the ocean and moon spirit brush against his soul, carrying with it the faint, indelible echo of a voice that had called the Avatar cycle a curse. Aang felt a cold fear, but beneath it, a strange, guilty relief. Someone, somewhere, had said the unsayable. The story was unraveling. And the Weaver had just handed a single, crucial thread to the boy who was supposed to be its hero. Chapter 5: Echoes in the Stone. The encounter with the ocean and moon spirit left a film of otherworldly static on Naruto's senses. It wasn't unpleasant, just a constant, low-grade reminder that the boundaries of this world were thinner, more conversational, than his own. He traveled east, towards the great mountain spine of the Earth Kingdom, his path guided by an intuition that had less to do with destination and more with resonance. He was a tuning fork, and he was listening for the disharmony. The land grew steeper, the air sharper. The scars of war here were more geological than immediate, abandoned terraces where farmers had fled, watchtowers burnt to skeletal stone, fingers pointing accusingly at the sky. He moved through the high passes like a rumor, a fleeting orange shadow that the few remaining shepherds spoke of in hushed tones. Some called him a mountain spirit, others a phantom of the fallen Earth King's army. He did nothing to correct them. Myths could be useful shields. His destination clarified itself 3 days later, as he crested a wind-scoured ridge. Below, nestled in the crook of two converging valleys, lay a town. Or what remained of one. Gaipan. From his vantage, the damage was methodical, surgical. The town's western half, the mills, the granaries, the smithies, was a blackened ruin, a deliberate act of economic castration. The eastern half, the residential and market quarters, stood mostly intact but eerily still. A Fire Nation flag, a stark red and black against the gray stone, hung limply over a repurposed Earth Kingdom Magistrates' Hall. The air above the town didn't shimmer with heat or smoke, but with a quieter, more insidious energy, occupation. It was a pressure, a muffling blanket over the spirit of the place. This wasn't a battleground, it was a specimen jar. A lesson in controlled subjugation. Naruto's jaw tightened. A textbook occupation, Kurama observed, his tone analytical. Break the industry, control the food, install a puppet. Crush the will without exterminating the body. Efficient. It's not efficient, Naruto thought coldly. It's slow poison. They're turning the land itself into a prison. He descended with the sunset at his back, melting into the long shadows of the ruined western sector. The smell was acrid, old smoke, rotting grain, and the underlying, coppery scent of dried blood that no rain could fully wash away. He moved through the shattered skeletons of buildings, his senses extended. He heard the lowing of a single, underfed ox in a penned yard. The distant, tinny clang of a Fire Nation patrol changing guard. And beneath it, the sound he was seeking, the soft, collective murmur of a people trying to remember how to breathe. He found it in a partially collapsed cellar beneath a charred bakery. A hidden space, accessed through a cleverly shifted rubble pile. Inside, by the guttering light of a single tallow candle, about 30 Gaipan residents huddled. They were a cross-section of the town's former life, an elderly miller with flour still under his nails, a seamstress clutching a half-mended tunic, a blacksmith whose massive shoulders were slumped in defeat. And at the center, speaking in a low, fervent whisper, was a young man with intense eyes and hands that moved like he was still shaping clay. The supply convoy comes every 7 days, the young man was saying, his voice a strained wire. They take 2/3 of the harvest, leave us just enough to not starve. The guards at the mill are lazy, drunk after sundown. If we could organize a diversion at the eastern gate, a small group could infiltrate the mill, take back just a fraction, just enough to get us all hanged, Lee. The miller interrupted, his voice a dry rustle. They have firebenders. We have rocks and rage. And the Avatar is not coming to save a nothing town like Gapan. So we just lie down and die? Lee shot back, his passion tipping into desperation. Let them grind us into the dirt. A heavy silence followed, thick with shared hopelessness. This was the true victory of occupation, not the broken walls, but the broken will. Naruto made his presence known not with a sound, but by allowing a sliver of his chakra to brush against the edge of the space, a gentle, non-threatening pulse of awareness. Every head snapped towards the cellar entrance. Lee was on his feet in an instant, a crude stone dagger appearing in his hand. Who's there? Naruto stepped into the circle of candlelight. His orange jacket was a shocking flare of color in the gloom. 30 pairs of eyes widened in fear and confusion. He was clearly not Fire Nation. But he was also not Earth Kingdom. He was an unknown. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, he said, his voice calm, filling the small space without needing volume. I was passing through. I heard you speaking. A spy, a woman hissed, shrinking back. If I were a spy, Naruto said, kneeling slowly to put himself at their level, a non-threatening posture, you'd already be in chains. I am a stranger. A traveler who has seen this play before, in different costumes, on a different stage. Lee didn't lower his dagger. What do you want? To listen? Naruto's gaze swept the room, meeting each pair of eyes. He saw the miller's resignation, the seamstress's terror, the blacksmith's smoldering, impotent anger. And in Lee, he saw the most dangerous and necessary thing, a spark. A spark currently being smothered by the reality of fire against flesh. Your plan, Naruto continued, looking at Lee. The diversion, the infiltration of the mill. It's tactically sound. For a unit of trained Shin, soldiers. But you are not soldiers. You are civilians. Your strength is not in force, but in persistence. In being the stone that wears down the blade. Lee's defiance faltered, replaced by frustration. What good is persistence when our children are hungry now? A fair question. Naruto leaned forward. Tell me about the mill guards. You said they're lazy, drunk? What do they talk about? What do they complain about? What do they miss? The group exchanged confused glances. The blacksmith, a man named Bo, spoke up, his voice a low rumble. They complain about the damp. About the stubborn earth stink. They miss spicy food. Real Fire Nation cuisine. The gruel our cook makes for them is bland. Naruto nodded slowly. And the convo? Who commands it? What's his temperament? Lieutenant Shin, the miller said bitterly. A proud man. Arrogant. Hates being late. Hates disorder. Naruto was silent for a moment, piecing the fragments together. This was not a problem for a Rasengan. This was a problem for understanding. For a different kind of warfare. You cannot win this with a direct fight, he said finally. Not yet. Your first victory must be to make the occupation inefficient. To make Gapan a thorn, not a prize. To do that, you need to think like water, not like a rock trying to be a mountain. Lee looked skeptical but intrigued. What does that mean? It means, Naruto said, a ghost of his old, strategic self coming to the fore. You don't steal from the mill. You make the mill's output unreliable. You don't attack the guards. You demoralize them. You use their arrogance, their homesickness, their routines against them. He began to outline, not a plan, but a series of principles. Sabotage that looked like wear and tear. Misfortune that targeted morale. A whispered rumor network that turned suspicion inwards among the occupiers. It was the doctrine of the weaker side, honed over centuries of conflict in his world, the art of making the cost of control exceed its benefit. He taught them nothing of chakra. He taught them observation, timing, and the weaponization of the mundane. How a strategically placed, rotten fish could sicken a squad for days. How a subtle shift in a load-bearing beam could cause a storage room to, accidentally, collapse, burying confiscated grain. How to spread rumors of a spirit haunting the ruined western sector, playing on Fire Nation superstitions. This is coward's work, the blacksmith muttered, though his eyes gleamed with a new, cunning light. No, Naruto corrected gently. This is the work of survivors. The strong can afford bravery. The occupied must be clever. Your goal is not to drive them out tonight. Your goal is to make every day they stay here a little more frustrating, a little more costly, until the idea of holding Gapan becomes more trouble than it's worth to some bureaucrat back in the Fire Nation capital. He spent hours with them, answering questions, refining ideas, always steering them away from direct, suicidal confrontation. He was not their leader. He was a catalyst. a teacher of a darker, quieter form of hope. As the meeting broke up in the dead of night, Lee approached him. The dagger was gone. You speak like a general. But you wear no uniform. I've had my fill of uniforms, Naruto said. They always end up defining the enemy, and eventually, the enemy starts to look a lot like anyone who's suffering. Lee studied him. Why help us? What do you get? The satisfaction of watching a spark not go out, Naruto replied. He placed a hand on the cold stone wall of the cellar. This town, it has a voice. A low, pained hum. I heard it from the ridge. Don't let them silence it completely. Even a hum can become a song again. He left them then, slipping back into the night. He didn't go far. He found a high perch in the ruined clock tower overlooking the town square. He would observe. Ensure the first, fragile steps of their resistance weren't immediately crushed. Dawn came, gray and cold. The town stirred under the watchful eyes of Fire Nation sentries. Naruto watched as Bo the blacksmith, reporting for his forced labor at the mill, tripped, and spilled a bucket of foul-smelling tannin into the guard's breakfast pot. He watched as the seamstress, mending a lieutenant's tunic, used a slightly different, itchier thread. He watched as children playing in the square, accidentally, kicked a ball that knocked over a neat stack of firewood, causing a minor, chaotic delay. Small things. Insignificant things. But done with a new, quiet coordination. The reaction was subtle but telling. The guards were snappier, more frustrated. Lieutenant Shin's voice could be heard berating a subordinate for the disorderly state of the yard. The fabric of the occupation, woven with threads of fear and dominance, was being subtly picked at. On the third night, as Naruto prepared to move on, satisfied the spark was now a sustained ember, he felt it. A different kind of tremor in the earth. Not a spirit's grief, but a focused, powerful intention. It was coming from deep within the mountain north of the town. Curiosity piqued, he left Gay-Pen behind, climbing towards the source. He found the cave entrance hidden behind a waterfall, the roar of water masking all sound within. Inside, the air was cool and still, smelling of damp rock and ozone. And there, in a vast cavern illuminated by glowing green crystals, he saw her. A small girl, barely 12, barefoot, with sightless eyes and a fierce grin. Toph Beifong was a contained earthquake. She stood in the center of the cavern, her feet firmly planted, and with a series of fluid, powerful movements, she shaped the earth. Not like the Earth Kingdom soldiers he'd seen, with their rigid, defensive stances. She danced with it. Walls rose and fell at her whim. Spires of rock twisted into elegant, impossible shapes before collapsing into gravel. She was not bending the earth, she was conversing with it, listening through her feet and answering with her will. It was the purest, most instinctual form of the art he had witnessed. She was also, clearly, in hiding. A runaway. A jewel refusing to be set in its predetermined crown. He observed, unseen, for a long time. Her power was monumental, but it was untamed, joyous, and fiercely independent. She rejected the traditional forms, the stodgy earthbending of her culture, and in doing so, she had discovered something purer. Finally, he let a pebble dislodge from the wall. Toph froze, her head tilting. Who's there? She demanded, not with fear, but with annoyance. If you're another one of Daddy's uptight earthbenders, I'll bear you up to your neck. Naruto stepped into the crystalline light. Not from your father. Not an earthbender. She looked at him through the vibrations in the stone. Her brows furrowed. Huh. You're weird. You're standing there, but you're not. Your feet are on the ground, but you feel light. And what's with the jacket? Trying to get shot with a fireball? A genuine, unexpected laugh escaped Naruto. The first in what felt like weeks. Her bluntness was a tonic. It's a long story. My name's Naruto. I saw what you were doing. It's incredible. Toph preened slightly, crossing her arms. Yeah, well, it's the real earthbending. Not that stiff, formal garbage they teach in rings. They're so busy listening to their teachers, they forget to listen to the earth. You listen, Naruto said, impressed. You hear it better than anyone I've met here. Damn right I do. She stomped her foot, and a chair of solid rock rose from the floor for her to sit on. So, what's your deal, not an earthbender? You move quietly. You're not Fire Nation. You're not Earth Kingdom. You're just a guy. Just a guy, he agreed, smiling. Who appreciates someone who breaks the rules to find a deeper truth. Toph's milky eyes seemed to sharpen. You're the one, aren't you? The one they're whispering about in the towns. The guy who talks to spirits and doesn't burn. The unbalanced. Naruto's smile faded into something more somber. Is that what they're calling me? Yeah. Some think you're a spirit. Some think you're a crazy hermit. I think you're just someone who's as tired of their crap as I am. She leaned forward. Is it true? You really can't bend anything? I can't bend, Naruto confirmed. But I have my own ways. And I agree with you. The rules, the traditions, they often exist to keep power in certain hands. To keep people like you in a comfortable cage. Toph was silent for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she grinned, a wild, rebellious thing. I like you? You're not trying to tell me what to do. Or how to be. You get it. She stood up. You heading north? Towards the big war? Towards where I'm needed, he said. Humph. Well, if you run into a bunch of kids traveling with a flying bison and a bald monk, tell the blind earthbender says they're idiots for being so obvious. Her expression turned serious for a flash. And tell the Avatar that there's more than one way to hold up the world. It was a profound statement, coming from a child who had discovered her own seismic truth in a cave. Naruto bowed his head. I will. Thank you, Toph Beifong. As he turned to leave, her voice stopped him. Hey, Naruto. This unbalanced thing, don't let it get to you. The world's been unbalanced for a long time. Maybe it needs a good shove to find its feet again. He looked back at the small, mighty girl standing defiantly in her crystal palace. Maybe it does. Leaving the cave, the roar of the waterfall washing away his trail, Naruto felt a strange sense of affirmation. In the cellar of Gaipan, he'd seen the resilience of the suppressed. In this cave, he'd seen the revolutionary power of the unorthodox. Both were forms of resistance. Both were answers to the rigid, crushing destiny imposed by war and tradition. He was not alone in questioning the story. The threads of dissent were everywhere, waiting to be woven into something new. His presence wasn't just causing disruption, it was acting as a mirror, showing people the strength they already possessed but were told to ignore. The road ahead led deeper into the war-torn heart of the Earth Kingdom, towards the rumored location of a fleeing avatar. Naruto continued his journey, no longer just a wanderer, but a quiet, gathering storm of questions, with the echo of a blind girl's laughter and the stubborn hum of an occupied town ringing in his ears. Chapter 6: The Uninvited Guest. The whispers of Gaipan's quiet rebellion faded into the rumble of distant thunderheads piling against the mountains. Naruto moved with the weather, a solitary figure tracing the borderlands between Fire Nation control and Earth Kingdom stubbornness. The land here was a patchwork of fear and defiance, fields left fallow to starve the occupiers, bridges, mysteriously, collapsed only to be rebuilt under the lash, and always, the low, spiritual thrum of a world holding its breath. It was this breath that changed. 5 days north of Gaipan, the natural energy, which had been a discordant symphony of pain and tension, suddenly found a new, pulsing focal point. It wasn't a spirit's wound or a place of massacre. It was a convergence. A gathering of powerful, clashing human energies, tangled with something vast and ancient trying to wake up. And at the center of it all, a familiar, gentle, and desperately overwhelmed signature, the child avatar, Aang. Naruto felt it as a storm front on his sage senses. A conflict was brewing, not of armies, but of ideologies made flesh. He altered his course, a silent arrow drawn towards the epicenter. He found them at a place where the land itself seemed undecided, a high, windswept plateau where the earth crumbled into jagged spires overlooking a deep, mist-filled chasm. It was a natural arena, and it was crowded. On one outcropping, a small, ragged group, the air nomad boy Aang, his gray eyes wide with a burden too heavy for his small shoulders, the water tribe girl, Katara, standing protectively with water already coiled around her hands, her brother, Sokka, brandishing a boomerang with more courage than sense. And with them, the runaway Toph, a smirk on her face but her bare feet planted in a stance of pure readiness. The Avatar's team. Children playing at being saviors because the world gave them no other choice. Arrayed against them, on a higher, commanding ridge, were the true instruments of the world's balance. A line of Fire Nation soldiers, elite and impassive, flanking 2 figures who radiated menace. One was a woman with hair like white flame and eyes of gold, her posture regal and utterly devoid of empathy, Princess Azula. The other was an older man with a topknot and a face like a clenched fist, General Bujing. Between the two groups, the air crackled with impending violence. But the true focus, the prize over which they all hovered, was the chasm itself. From its depths, a soft, rhythmic, golden light pulsed, in time with a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in the teeth. Naruto recognized it instantly, a slumbering spirit of immense power, a geological guardian. And coiled around the entrance to its sanctum was a grotesque lattice of black iron, covered in glowing red sigils. It was a technology of suppression, of binding. The Fire Nation wasn't just conquering land, they were capturing gods. The final component, General. Azula's voice carried on the thin air, cool and precise as a scalpel. The Avatar's emotional spike. His fear, his desperation, it will be the perfect catalyst to fully awaken the spirit. And once awakened, our inhibitors will bind it. A weapon of unimaginable scale, ready to be aimed at the heart of Ba Sing Se. General Bujing grunted. A clever use of destiny, Princess. The avatar arrives to save the spirit, and in doing so, provides the very energy to enslave it. Aang was shaking, not from cold, but from horror. I won't help you trap it. You don't have a choice. Azula smiled. It's already stirring to your presence. Your mere existence is the trigger. You see, Avatar? This is your true function. Not to restore balance, but to be the lever by which greater powers are moved. It was a perfect, cruel inversion of the Avatar's purpose. Aang was being weaponized by his own destiny. Naruto watched from the shadows of a towering spire, his blood running cold. This was it, the core sickness of this world's philosophy, laid bare. Destiny as a trap. Balance as a cage for power. And a child as a lockpick. Katara sent a whip of water at the iron lattice. It sizzled and steamed harmlessly against the red sigils. Toph stomped, and a wave of earth surged towards the Fire Nation line. Azula didn't even flinch. A wall of blue fire erupted, vaporizing the stone. The difference in power was stark, professional, and brutal. Enough, Azula said. Force the boy to the edge. Let him feel the spirit's call. Let his panic do the work. The elite firebenders advanced. Sokka threw his boomerang, which was batted aside by a precise jet of flame. Katara fought valiantly, but she was outnumbered and outclassed. Toph held her ground, creating barriers and launching boulders, but Azula's lightning-fast, precision strikes were disrupting her seismic sense. Aang, tears of frustration in his eyes, airbent a protective vortex, but it was a defensive move. He was paralyzed by the terrible paradox. To fight was to risk awakening the spirit. To not fight was to be captured and used. Naruto had seen enough. He didn't descend in a heroic blast. He walked out from behind the spire, onto the open plateau, as if joining a conversation already in progress. The wind tugged at his jacket. All motion ceased. Every eye turned to the stranger who had simply appeared in the middle of their standoff. Azula's golden eyes narrowed, calculating. The report was accurate. The orange anomaly. General Bujing scowled. The unbalanced. Seize him. Two firebenders broke off, rushing Naruto. He didn't break stride. As they unleashed their fire, he flicked two fingers. Two small, almost invisible pellets, hiding in smoke technique tags, shot from his sleeve and popped at their feet, engulfing them in thick, chakra-infused smoke that stung the eyes and choked the lungs. They stumbled back, coughing, blinded. I'm not here for a fight, Naruto announced, his voice carrying over the wind. He stopped midway between the two groups, deliberately placing himself in the no-man's land. I'm here to point out the flaw in your design, princess. Azula's smile was icy. Oh? And what flaw would that be, anomaly? You're using a child's heart as a battery, Naruto said, looking directly at Aang. The boy stared back, a mixture of hope and confusion in his eyes. You think fear and desperation are simple fuels. But they're volatile. Unstable. You might awaken the spirit, but you cannot predict what form its rage will take when it finds itself in chains. You might not be forging a weapon. You might be lighting a fuse to the entire spiritual bedrock of this region. Spiritual conjecture from a man with no bending. General Bujing scoffed. Princess, let me incinerate this interference. Wait, Azula said, her gaze locked on Naruto. He fascinated her. He was a variable her equations couldn't solve. You speak as if you understand spirits. I understand wounded creatures, Naruto replied. He turned slightly, facing the chasm. The pulsing light was growing stronger, the hum deepening. The spirit was stirring, drawn by the concentrated anguish. And that being down there is about to have a nightmare. You're not offering it a reason to serve you. You're offering it a reason to hate everything. He took a step towards the chasm's edge, ignoring the pointed weapons. He knelt, placing his palm on the cold stone. He reached out with his sage sense, not to the spirit, but to the binding. The red sigils on the iron lattice. They weren't just technology. They were made manifest, a brutal, arrogant assertion of dominance over the natural order. They smelled of forged smoke and ambition, and they were an insult. What are you doing? Azula's voice held a note of command, and of the first flicker of uncertainty. Showing you the alternative to a hammer, Naruto said. He focused his chakra, not in a blast, but in a wave of precise, neutralizing energy. A Fuinjutsu, chakra disruption technique, designed to temporarily unravel energetic structures. It wouldn't destroy the iron. It wouldn't even destroy the sigils permanently. But for a few critical minutes, it would render them quiet. A ripple of invisible force emanated from his hand, washing over the black iron lattice. The glowing red sigils flickered, dimmed, and went dark. The oppressive, coercive energy they emitted vanished. The only light from the chasm now was the soft, troubled gold of the awakening spirit. The effect was immediate. The deep, resonant hum from the chasm shifted in tone. The panic and rage bled away, replaced by a low, curious rumble. The pulsing light softened, became less frantic. Azula's perfect composure cracked. The inhibitors! What did you do? I turned off the noise, Naruto said, standing. Now it's not being shouted awake. It's just waking up. A great, moss-covered head, the size of a house, slowly rose from the mist of the chasm. It was a badgermole, but of monumental scale and age, its eyes like polished pools of dark amber. It looked at the tiny figures on the plateau. Its gaze swept over the Fire Nation soldiers, lingering on their armor of red and black, on the now dormant cage meant for it. Then it looked at Aang, and a sense of ancient recognition passed between them, avatar and spirit. Finally, its deep, earth-grinding voice spoke, not in words, but directly into their minds. Who dares disturb the deep stone's sleep? Who seeks to bind the bedrock's heart? Azula, ever the tactician, recovered first. Great Spirit! We of the Fire Nation seek only to protect the world's balance. The Avatar's presence destabilizes. Silence, little flame. The spirit's mental voice was a landslide, crushing her words. I smell the metal of chains. I taste the intent to enslave. You do not speak for balance. You speak for the will that would make all other wills bow. It turned its massive head towards Naruto. And you? You are not of the elements. You carry a different song. You quieted the screaming metal. Why? Naruto bowed. Great Guardian. I quieted it because a being should be greeted with respect, not with a collar. You have slept through ages. The world above is sick with a war that justifies itself with words like destiny and balance. This child, he gestured to Aang, is burdened with fixing it. Those soldiers seek to use you to win it. I have no grand design. I only believe that power, especially power as old as yours, deserves a choice. The badgermole spirit was silent, contemplating. The entire plateau held its breath. Azula's hands were clenched, blue sparks dancing between her fingers, but she dared not attack. This was beyond her calculus. The air child bears the weight, the spirit mused, looking at Aang. It is a heavy weight for small shoulders. The fire children bear the weight of a tyrant's dream. And you bear the weight of a world that broke and was remade. Its amber eyes seemed to see through Naruto, seeing the ghosts of his own wars. You asked for a choice. A novel concept. The Avatar cycle offers no choice. The Fire Nation's conquest offers no choice. You, who are outside both, you offer only a question. The great head swung back to Azula and Bujing. I choose to return to the Deep Stone. This place is polluted with ambition. Tell your Fire Lord that the old powers will not be his weapons. The earth remembers. And it is patient. With a final, ground-shifting rumble, the colossal badgermole sank back into the chasm, the golden light fading until only mist remained. The binding lattice, its purpose void, stood as a silent, black monument to failed ambition. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the wind. Azula's face was a mask of cold, pure fury. She had been denied by a spirit, and upstaged by an anomaly. Her mission was a spectacular failure, and it hinged on a man who didn't even bend. This changes nothing, she said, her voice deadly quiet. You have made an enemy of the Fire Nation royal family, anomaly. There is no place in this world for something that cannot be categorized. Naruto met her gaze. Maybe the world needs fewer categories and more compassion. With a last, searing glare that promised future pain, Azula turned. General, we are leaving. This location is compromised. The Fire Nation soldiers, chastened and confused, retreated with her, melting back over the ridge. On the other side of the plateau, the Avatar's team stood in stunned silence. Aang was looking at Naruto with an expression of awe, gratitude, and a deep, nagging anxiety. It was Sokka who spoke first, lowering his boomerang. Okay. What was that? Toph punched the air. Told you he was cool. Katara rushed to Aang's side. Are you okay? Aang nodded, but his eyes were fixed on Naruto, who was now looking at the empty chasm, his back to them. The Hokage walked over to the edge and sat down, his legs dangling over the abyss. The confrontation was over, but the spiritual and political fallout was only beginning. After a moment, Aang approached hesitantly. Thank you. You saved me. And the spirit. Naruto didn't turn. I didn't save you, Aang. I just gave you a moment to breathe. The trap was your destiny. I turned off the trap. The destiny is still there. Aang flinched. The words were harsh, but they rang with the truth he felt in his bones. Who are you? Finally, Naruto looked at him. Up close, Aang saw the lines of weariness around the man's eyes, the profound calm that seemed hard-won, not innate. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm from a place very far away. A place that also believed in chosen ones and cycles of hatred. We broke ours. It cost almost everything. You broke a cycle? Aang whispered, the concept both terrifying and electrifying. We're trying, Naruto said. It's a daily fight. Not with bending, but with choices. Hard choices. He looked at the group now gathered behind Aang, Katara's protective stance, Sokka's wary assessment, Toph's defiant grin. You have good friends. They see you as Aang. The world sees you as the Avatar. You have to find a way to be both, without letting one destroy the other. How? The plea was raw, childlike. I can't tell you that, Naruto said softly. But I can tell you this, destiny is a story. And stories can be rewritten. Not by one person, but by everyone who refuses to act their assigned part. He stood up, brushing the dust from his pants. You have a long road. Don't walk it looking only at the horizon. Look at the people walking with you. He began to walk away, back towards the lonely spires. Wait, Katara called out. Where are you going? You could travel with us. Help us. Naruto paused. He looked back at them, these children who were the world's last best hope. My path is different. I cannot be your guide, or your weapon. If I travel with you, I become part of your story, another character in the Avatar legend. My role is to be outside it. To be the question that doesn't have an easy answer. He offered a small, sad smile. But if you ever find yourselves cornered by a destiny that feels like a cage, remember the spirit in the chasm. Remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to play the game. He gave a final nod, a gesture of deep respect to each of them, and then he was gone, vanishing into the labyrinth of stone with the shinobi's silence. The Avatar's team was left alone on the plateau, the wind colder, the world suddenly more complex and more hopeful than it had been an hour before. They had been saved not by a mighty warrior, but by a man who had questioned a god and offered a spirit a choice. And in the depths of the Earth Kingdom, a report was being drafted. It would speak of a catastrophic failure, of an unknown variable that could neutralize spirit-binding technology and converse with ancient powers. It would not call him unbalanced. It would assign him a new, more dangerous title, the uninvited guest. And a guest, as both Iroh and Kurama might agree, has a way of overstaying his welcome and changing the household forever.